Sister falsely accused me of SA. Now I'm kicked out and my family hates me. Jess, my 19-year-old sister stormed into my room, her face a mask of anger. You touched me, she hissed, her voice low and dangerous, carrying the weight of 1,000 accusations. The words hung in the air, heavy and cold, as if they were a tangible object. My mind was caught off guard and scrambled to comprehend the absurdity of her statement. Touch. Us. It was a concept so alien, so impossible, that it felt like a dream. We'd grown up sharing secrets, laughter, and even clothes. Our lives had been an intertwined tapestry, and the thought of such a breach was inconceivable. Yet a flicker of memory ignited in the depths of my mind. A playful tussle on the couch, a moment of youthful exuberance. I'd cupped her arm, a fleeting gesture of sibling rivalry, a harmless act lost in the shuffle of time. Could this be what she was referring to? Panic seized me as I tried to explain, to reason with her. But her eyes, filled with a cold intensity, were a fortress I couldn't penetrate. It was as if she had transformed into a stranger, a hostile force invading the sanctuary of our shared childhood. The weight of the accusation grew heavier with each passing moment. I reached for my phone, the only lifeline in this descending chaos. The voices of my parents, distant and muffled through the electronic conduit, offered a glimmer of hope. They listened, their disbelief as palpable as the silence that followed. And then, the inevitable verdict. I was an outcast, banished from the only home I'd ever known. Their voices, once filled with love and support, were now laced with doubt and accusation. They spoke of protecting Jess, of believing her without question. The words were like daggers, piercing my heart. Jess, her face twisted with triumph, watched as my world crumbled around me. At that moment I felt a profound sense of betrayal. The sister I had known, the one we had shared laughter and secrets with, was gone, replaced by a monstrous stranger. As I gathered my belongings, a cold numbness washed over me. The house, once filled with the comforting sounds of family life, now felt like a hostile environment. With each item packed, a piece of my life was being torn away. The future, once filled with possibilities, now seemed bleak and uncertain. As I stepped out into the unfamiliar world, I was not just a young man without a home, but a victim of a cruel and unjust accusation. Jess and me, we were like oil and water. She was all energy and crazy ideas, while I was more like a couch potato, happy to read a book. We fought a lot, but we also laughed a ton. Sometimes we'd team up against mom and dad, just for fun. But mostly, we just tried to stay out of each other's way. Our parents were okay, I guess. Dad was always working and mom tried to keep things from blowing up. Our house was more like a bus station, people coming and going, but not really hanging out together. Jess was always the drama queen, even as a child. I remember one afternoon, she'd spent ages building a towering block castle. Just as I walked by, it toppled over. Instead of laughing it off like normal kids, she burst into tears, accusing me of knocking it down. Mom rushed in, and she sided with Jess. It was the first time I realized her knack for turning any situation into a performance, always casting herself as the victim. Jess was always 2 steps ahead, or so she thought. She was the queen of high school drama, and I was her clueless little brother. So when I developed a massive crush on this girl named Ashley, of course, I turned to her for advice. She's totally into you, Jess said, examining me with a critical eye. Just tell her she's got amazing eyes. Girls love compliments. Easy enough, right? Wrong. The next day I mustered all my courage and approached Ashley. Hey Ashley, I stammered. I think you have really cool eyes. Her face turned bright red. I thought maybe she was shy or flattered. Then wham! She slapped me right across the face. The whole cafeteria went silent. I was mortified. Turns out, amazing eyes meant something completely different to her. Jess had failed me spectacularly. I didn't think much of it because my sister suffers from a few mental health problems, so I pushed it off. After Jess went to college, she came back all different. She was super bossy and thought she knew everything. We'd argue about stupid stuff, like whose turn it was to do the dishes. And money was tight at our place, so we'd fight about that too. It was like we were strangers living in the same house. Jess was like a magnet for boyfriends. One after the other, they'd parade through our house, each one worse than the last. I swear, she had a boyfriend club or something. Every time one ended, a new one was waiting in the wings. It was like my room was suddenly the do not disturb zone. I'd be chilling, minding my own business, when I'd hear the dreaded knock. There she'd be, all smiles and giggles, dragging some new guy behind her. Hey, can Jake stay over? She'd ask, like it was the most normal thing in the world. But then, the torture would begin. They'd take over the living room, their laughter echoing through the house. I'd try to ignore them, but it was like nails on a chalkboard. One time, Jake accidentally spilled soda all over my favorite video game. I was so mad. I wanted to scream, but I knew it wouldn't do any good. Jess just apologized and promised to buy me a new one, but I knew she wouldn't. It was like I was the invisible kid even though I was older than her. Since that day, Jake hated me, so my sister looked at me differently. Then came the event which changed everything. Our parents were out and it was just me and my sister home alone. During the day, she teased me and even took my phone while I was using it as a joke. My sister holding my phone hostage, I grabbed her arm and took it out of her hands. Both of us seemed to be having a good time, laughing and smiling until we eventually went on with the days in our own rooms. But then a few hours later, she walked in and changed everything. She accused me of touching her and then that's when the call with my parents happened. From laughing and smiling with my sister, to her begging my parents to kick me out within a matter of hours. I just grabbed my sister's arm to get my phone back but she's framed it like I'm some animal. I was betrayed by the only people I could trust. As I gathered my belongings, a cold numbness washed over me. The house, once filled with the comforting sounds of family life, now felt like a hostile environment. With each item packed, a piece of my life was being torn away. The future, once filled with possibilities, now seemed bleak and uncertain. As I stepped out into the unfamiliar world, I was not just a young man without a home, but a victim of a cruel and unjust accusation. The front door slammed shut behind me, echoing the finality of my departure. I turned to face the house, the once familiar structure now a looming fortress of betrayal. A bitter wind whipped through the air, carrying with it the weight of my despair. I was alone, adrift in a sea of uncertainty, with no compass to guide me. The days that followed were a relentless assault on my sanity. Every interaction with Jess was a minefield. Every word dissected and weaponized. My parents, once pillars of support, now hovered between disbelief and fear, their eyes darting between Jess and me, like trapped animals caught in a storm. The first family meeting was a disaster. Dad, his face etched with exhaustion, tried to mediate. "We need to figure this out," he began, his voice trembling slightly. Jess, her eyes flashing with defiance, launched into a detailed account of the night in question, her voice filled with dramatic pauses and exaggerated emotion. I tried to interject, to explain, but my words were drowned out by her accusations. Mom, her eyes filled with tears, looked at me, a silent plea for an explanation. But what could I say? Every word felt like a betrayal of my own innocence. In the end, the meeting dissolved into a noise of accusations and denials, leaving us all more wounded than before. The weight of the accusation was a physical burden. Sleep became an elusive luxury, replaced by restless nights filled with nightmares and flashbacks. During the day, a fog of despair enveloped me, making it difficult to focus on even the simplest tasks. My appetite vanished, replaced by a gnawing emptiness that mirrored the void in my soul. One afternoon, while trying to concentrate on a report, my phone rang. It was my boss. His voice, usually warm and encouraging, was now laced with concern. "I've heard some things," he began, his words hanging in the air. I tried to explain, to deny, but the words caught in my throat. The conversation ended abruptly, the click of the phone disconnecting me from a world that was rapidly closing in around me. That night, as I stared at the ceiling, the situation hit me with full force. I was not only fighting for my innocence but also for my identity, my reputation, and my future. The road ahead was uncertain and filled with obstacles and challenges. But as I lay there in the darkness, a flicker of defiance ignited within me. I would not be broken. I would fight for the truth, no matter the cost. The dawn broke, casting a pale light on the room. A new day was beginning, and with it a new chapter in this nightmare. I would face it head-on, one step at a time, determined to emerge from this ordeal with my dignity intact. I turned into a total wreck, with no job, no family, nothing. It wasn't until my dad decided to call and check up on me. I told him I was fine, but I for sure wasn't. He asked to meet up. I wasn't sure if this was just some other trap, but I decided anyway because I had nothing else to lose. My dad secretly started helping me out behind my mom's and sister's backs. He would give me some money, help me apply to get a job, but most importantly, he kept talking to me and treated me like I was still family. After a few months, I got myself back in order. I got a job doing landscaping for the city thanks to my dad. He still talks to me and we now go out every weekend to talk. My mom, though, picked Jess and hasn't spoken to me since. Well, there was actually one time I was sitting with my dad and she called him. Once she realized I was there, she said, "Tell him he's disgusting." And that was the last thing I heard from my mom. I heard my sister got a new boyfriend, which is no surprise. The only thing I wish I could ask her is why. Why did she lie and ruin my life?